So I see a lot of um, need for the patristic nectar. And, a good way to go about this is to say, stop seeking political analysis, seek patristic synthesis. I can remember stuff that politicians say, and I can remember stuff that people who want to pontificate about some kind of social justice issue, or how they need to get things done. Well, I mean, politics is kind of a way to get some things done, which is all well and good. I'm not knocking it. It just, when it comes down to the local level, it doesn't get anywhere. It can get somewhere because at the federal level, they're obviously too caught up in their own theater to even realize what the heck's going on with the average American, which is unfortunate, but pretty typical. So, um, when it comes to patristic synthesis and gaining that knowledge, extracting that nectar, that is something that you will remember. You have to remember it. And by that patristic synthesis, they're thinking things through. I mean, the early church fathers were so important to the laws and the dictates of the church, the dogmas, the doctrines. When you go back and see some of their quotes and piece them together, like I have, it's definitely important because that will make politics seem very secondary. As I said in earlier videos that I have, politics doesn't understand religion. And I think it's kind of the other way around too. Because it's very easy to extremize. It's very easy to take it to the extreme on both ends and not be able to walk that narrow path. And especially when you politicize something like religion. That's kind of nuts. Or when a religion goes political or is used for political means. It's not a good look. So it's one of those things where the patristic synthesis has tamed it down, has calmed it down, and as the fathers, the church fathers, and the ones that have preceded them in many ways, always say, look to the saints. They always say that the saints are important. Well, in politics, we do have those standout, I guess you could call them little s, saints of politics in a sense. But, they don't act like saintly men and women most of the time, which is no surprise. As to how seeking somebody that is better about it, that is better minded. I mean, there's people that are going to align with your ideologies for sure. But there's people that aren't going to realize that you have those ideologies. There are also people that are going to, know and come to know God through politics. They could do it. They could come to know God through plenty of avenues, paths, roads in life. I'm gonna, get a bit personal here, but I wasn't always a believer. I wasn't always somebody who, was rational or tried to think about what God is. I don't think anybody does. But when it came to, reading the church fathers and knowing what they have to say, and I'm still on that journey too. Seems like a never-ending one. It's one of those things where it's important to know, those kind of things and have that wisdom because the patristic nectar that's there and the massive amounts of intellectual, philosophical, theological, and just sometimes just downright life wisdom is all there. It's all there. I mean, take a recent saint of the church, Saint Paisos. There is someone he reminds me of that I loved very dearly in my life. Um, and I still feel his presence. My papu, my grandfather. I read something from Saint Paisos and I just feel my papu come through and say, "Wise up, kid." You know, something an old school kind of guy would say. Very appropriate, you know. So it's one of those things where that wisdom not only reverberates through that, the nectar is just it's so sweet. It's so, you know, it's so important than, something that a politician says. I don't feel my grandfather's words through what they say. They may say something like he said if they're from, the old school, but they don't have the same reverberation as, like, I guess a Greek to Greek would, like Saint Paisos to my papu would. Must be something about that about that mindset. But anyway, there's a definite sense of where, you can just feel their presence and you can just feel who they were and get a good idea. Whereas, put on a suit, a tie, look fancy, talk about some kind of policy that nobody's going to really care about, mm, you know, and people are out here struggling, wanting to feed their families. Well, you know, that's going to come down to a whole lot. And many people, don't take the road of even knowing who the church fathers are. So it's one of those things where that patristic nectar will keep you sane. The more you get into it and the more you get to elaborate it on a little bit, the better you have an idea, an understanding, and wanting to have an understanding, which is great, which is very crucial. It's allowed me to not seek so much political analysis and seek the patristic synthesis, where that nectar derives itself from and has become so totally holistic and reverberated through, somebody's soul rather than somebody's pocketbook.